Hello everyone and welcome back to Macro Day right here on Scriptcase by Jamie. And today we are diving into a macro that lets you make your grids visually, dynamically even, and also a lot more informative just by using this very simple, straightforward macro. It is the key to using color and style to highlight important data right where your users need to see it. So today we are diving into the sc_text_style macro. So let's dive in, shall we? So hello and welcome back to another episode right here on Scriptcase by Jamie. We have another macro here for you today and plenty more to go. So today's macro is the sc_text_style. Now I have written it here as txt. It is in fact text, T-E-X-T, and we will be checking that out in a moment. Now the purpose of the sc_text_style macro is to dynamically change the text style of a field in your grid application. And this macro is a powerful tool, pretty much like all the macros really, for conditional formatting, specifically this macro, allowing you to change a field's color, the size, the background, and also the weight based of the data that is within your record. Now, you will use this macro exclusively within the grid application, and the event that you want to use is the on-record event, because this is the logic that needs to be run for each individual row as the grid is basically being constructed or built or whatever you like. It's being generated, right? And then when you view it, it will then dynamically apply your custom text style to those fields. Now, there are some important parameters here, so let's go and check them out. And first of all, I should really, correct the macro. So it says sc_text_style. So let me save that and run that again, and just make sure that you have the correct macro visible to you. Okay, so with that, I will come here into my home, and as usual, I'm using the samples project or a samples project, and we have a grid here, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of these other grids that we have here. So let's go by the grid with filter, and we can check this one here. And there we have a nice little grid with the search at the top, and it's pretty nice. And then here we may want to make adjustments to the data that we have available in here, i.e. adjusting the text style. So let's check that out, and then we open up our grid then first of all, and then we have here our events, and there we have the on-record event. So the on-record event basically allows us to assign content or data, or in this case a text style, to an individual row as the grid is being generated. And as I was saying, with this specific macro, see sc_text_style, we do have type that in there, sc_text_style, there we go again, and that will then of course need to have some very specific macros in here, or data should I say. Now I've added some curly brackets in here. We do need also some standard brackets, and the curly brackets are here first of all our first parameter, and that would essentially be the field that we want to target. So here I will choose then the product name, and that is one word. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this straight away, and then we're going to create a second one, and we're going to use that on the unit price. So we're going to customize two fields within this grid, each of them with their own style basically. So here first of all, let me come here, we have then our next parameter, which is then the background color that we want to apply. And what I'm going to do here, actually, first of all, is let's start that again. Text underscore style, add our brackets in there, and then we close that up, of course. Fat fingers again today. Okay, so there we have here, first of all, our field name. Then we have a comma, and that is then our background color. Okay, and then we have another comma, and then we can apply now the size that we want to have applied here. And then also the field color itself. Okay, so there we have then also the background color, the size, the field color, well, you know, the font color. As with the font color, we should then also be able to adjust the family. So let me add that then in there also, font family, and then the final option would then be the, can you guess it? The weight. Okay, so with that, we can then define here our options. So let me just copy that from here, and that will just save me typing all of that out again. And we can do the same here, and don't forget the comma there. Okay, so with that, we can then apply a background color here. And if we don't want a background color, we can just remove it. So here, if I go, then here I'll go hash, for instance, and let's go 33 FF99, for instance. Here we will add a custom size of 15 pixels. And the font color, well, here, let's go with all the zeros. And the font family, well, we can go Arial and comma sans serif. And that's a dash in there. Okay, sans serif. And then we can then say, well, we want this to be bold. Okay, so of course, being the unit price, I would think then that we then have that in bold. So here, as I said on the product name, I will not apply a color there. I will increase the size of the text though. I will not add a color, so I will keep the color. I'll keep the font as well, but I will set that as bold. So now if I go ahead and save that, and I'm going to comment this first one out because that will more than likely give us an error message. And then if I go ahead and run the grid now, we can see now that the text style for the product name as well as the product price have now been customized according to the parameters I've just set for this awesome little macro. Now, you can use this macro in many different ways. For instance, you can add conditional logic. So for instance, if you have a text style that you want to apply when a due date has hit, for instance, then you can apply that also. And that's quite easy to do. Now, in this case, of course, we have unit price and quantities. So maybe we would want to adjust this when the stock has gone up. So let's adjust that slightly here. So let's go then if, first of all, add some brackets in here, and then else, we'll add an else in there as well, and delete one of those. And then with that, we can then change the style depending on, say, for instance, our field here. So if I say then our if units in stock, and if that is, well, less than or more than, whatever we want, say 30, and then we can just go ahead and adjust that. Now, in other cases, you may want to apply a date here, or maybe an order value, or whatever it is, depending on the data that you have available within your application. And then just like that, you will then have a customer. Of course, I have an error there. So else, and there we have removed our brackets here, and that will, of course, give us an error. Now, I will comment these one out because we have that there twice now already. Now at the moment, of course, it is being the same color, the same font size and everything else, but then we may want to adjust that. So if I come here and remove, say, the background color, if we have that value, and then just like that, some of the price values will then adjust depending on the stock value. So they're all over 30. So if I say here, let's change that to 60, and now we should see that come into effect because we have one value here with 50 and the rest of them with 98. And just like that, we can make changes on the fly to our grid text, which is pretty damn awesome and powerful. Okay, so with that, we have finished with today's macro, I'm afraid. It is pretty straightforward and easier to apply. Remember, this only works in grid applications. You need to use the onRecord event. And of course, the macro is sc_text_style. And with that, you can apply custom styles, background colors, font colors, changing the font, making the font weight heavier, whatever you like. It is entirely up to you, and you can apply that dynamically with this awesome macro. So, pretty straightforward. So with the SC text style, your grids are no longer just lists of data, right? In fact, they are live interactive reports that use visuals to communicate the critical information that you are providing to the end user. And it's all about making your data speak for itself, is it not? And with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy this macro and use it within your Scriptcase applications. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm sure you know how to reach me. So thanks for watching, and until next week, Friday, with another macro right here on Scriptcase by Jamie.